Day 377 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. And as always, we'll start off with a brief look at the Russian military losses. And currently, Russia is sitting on 154,830 military personnel losses, which represents an addition of 1,060 in the past 24 hours. So really hitting that 1K mark again. Then in terms of hardware losses, so 9 tanks, 11 APVs, 23 artillery, a whopping number, 3 air defense systems, and even an aircraft. So really huge numbers, really massive numbers in the last 24-hour reporting period, to say the least. Then we'll move across the map to have a look in Russia to begin with. So there was an explosion that occurred at a coal and gas plant near Moscow. And it was also confirmed by the Russian Ministry of Emergency Services, somewhat sizable too. As you can see, it's some 200 square meters or about 2,000 square foot. Then we'll move across back to the Ukrainian map, and where there's actually not been a lot of large-scale Russian wave or missile attacks in the past 18 days now. Earlier on, it averaged to be about every 12 or so days in January, February, but before that, back in December, it was averaged to be every 2 to 3 days. Now, I'm sure it will still occur, but it will also likely continue this slowing down trajectory. So less and less waves and less missiles per wave or salvo. Then we'll move a bit more specifically in the map today to the Donbass. So we'll start out in Kramatorsk, where the Russian army conducted a missile strike against Kramatorsk overnight, destroying a school. Was it empty? Yes, it was. But will that stop the Russian army from announcing an overwhelming success story, sending it back up the military chain of command? No, it won't. They'll take any victory, true or imagined. Speaking of victories or not victories for the Russian forces, so Bakhmut, it still holds, guys. And it appears certain decisions have been made to hold positions here for now for the Ukrainian armed forces. Fighting does continue, it's heaviest in 5 different directions at least at the moment. North, east and south on multiple attack axes or vectors there. However, it appears the Ukrainian forces are consolidating positions really more west of the Bakhmut River. And they are determined to not let the Russian forces take the actual city center of Bakhmut itself. In fact, they've gone one step further, the Ukrainian armed forces, by sending in additional AFU reinforcements to assist with those defensive efforts. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows for the Russian Wagner forces either. At the moment, the Wagner forces themselves, they're the ones still doing the heavy lifting for the Russian army, or Russia in general at the moment. But they're undersupplied. In fact, Prigozhin is still asking for more ammo. So he posted yet another video to his social media account saying Wagner needs more ammo. He basically threatened to abandon Bakhmut and fold his positions if he doesn't get any more. You see, a bit of a backstory here, but due to internal power struggles within the political and the military spheres of Russia, all these groups don't actually share a singular roadmap to success. Many commanders and generals don't want to see Prigozhin making all the gains, in fact, and have all the successes, as few as they may really be considered to be when you look at the grand scale of thing. I'll throw up some sort of a map for that one too. As a result, these commanders of the actual Russian army and the generals, they actually somewhat are limiting Prigozhin and his Wagner forces' resource capacity. And you know, a modern NATO army would never get into these types of childish squabbles. And that's what they are, really. I wish I had more time to get to today to get into that, in fact. Then we'll take a look further down and we'll move across to Mariupol. So that is hiding there by the sea. Now, a bit of a quick footage here today. So, in what appears to be a bit of a panic mode for the Russian forces, as they're sending some future scrap metal to the Zaporizhia front lines, in what appears to be a Russian concern for a potential upcoming Ukrainian offensive in this region here. And make no mistake, these are really just infantry fighting vehicles. What you can see here, there's no heavy armor of sorts, tanks, for instance. Oh, then nearby in our favourite place of Vuhledar. So, wreckage footage of a Russian Ka-52 Alligator attack helicopter that was downed just outside of Vuhledar, apparently crashing behind Russian lines. It was obviously attempting to perform some ground support for infantry runs. It was likely commanded to do so, but just as Icarus flew too close to the sun, this chopper flew too close to a Ukrainian air defense missile. Then, just quickly, in the occupied peninsula, the Russian occupied peninsula of Crimea, there were explosions that were reported at the Belbak military airbase in Sevastopol, located about 230 kilometers from Ukraine's front lines, or about 140 miles. Now, some would like to think this was a long-range missile that extends that far. I'm guessing it was an unmanned aerial drone, though. It wouldn't be the first time, but either way, it's certainly a good idea to take out any frontline Russian air bases. Then we'll move across to some news for today and start off with a quick hardware update. So, do you guys remember the JDAMs? There was very little talk about these munitions coming in recent times. First announced in about December, but basically, what's happened is they are now confirmed to not only be in Ukraine, but in operation in Ukraine as well. So these puppies are air launched and have a range of about 45 miles, which is only 10 miles shorter than HIMARS, the GLMRS variants there, which were really obviously a game changer in this war. They are precision guided GPS munitions and one heck of a lot cheaper than the HIMARS missiles I just mentioned as well. So this is really certainly an upgrade to Ukraine's offensive operational capabilities. One thing on its own, not always a game changer, but when added to the Ukrainian landscape of available weapons platforms, just fantastic to see. Then in some other news, Russia has ordered 21 crematories, mobile crematories from China, to very likely hide the truth about their losses, their constant cannon fodder assaults, particularly in the Donbass front lines. I'd actually prefer not to get into the blood-soaked calculus for this one, but 21 mobile crematories is a significant indication of Russia's own meat grinder situation. Then in some other news, the UK Ministry of Defence says that Russia continues to deploy vintage tanks on the field, like T-62 tanks. And are we surprised? No, not really. And it's not even just that, it gets worse, because in recent days, the UK MOD also said Russia has started to deploy the BTR-50 armoured personnel carriers for the first time. These ones were first fielded in 1954 and started development in 1952. And it's funny because the Russian trolls in the comments still push the narrative that Russia is saving the best hardware, the best game-changing tech and tanks for last. But maybe they should have brought in the best after day 3 when they couldn't capture the capital. Or how about even the first year? And those trolls, they're just paid to do their misinformation scare tactics. They're not winning the real war on the battlefield, so they attempt to win the information war, that's all. Then in another Russian military mobilization blunder, so these Russian mobilized soldiers, they're appealing to Putin himself, so not uncommon to do these days, about various things such as not being provided with strategy or tactics and sent into assaults unprepared, lacking fire support, getting no assistance from their commanders, no contact even. Weapons that they are using, they say, are from the 1940s, including old mortar systems and guns. They get no air reconnaissance. They're using old combat vehicles, they say. Oh, and get this, they say they are not an assault unit, and they were trained for territorial defense instead. And this is a very common theme of all these blunders. So they get reeled in with the promises of a cruisy border defense job, no actual frontline assaults, not even mentioned at all. So hanging out, say, between the Luhansk and Russia borders there, then they literally get sent to the front lines instead to plug the gaps. Then in some quick funnies to round it all off for today, guys. So this first one, I don't actually know the full legitimacy of it, but yeah, I just thought I'd mention it anyway. So in this letter here, apparently from the director of the Russian Military Museum, has asked the German ambassador for a new Leopard 2 tank for his museum. Now, if true, this request probably came from the very top of the Russian military, looking to get their hands on a Leopard 2 to effectively determine its weaknesses, its strengths, and how they can counteract it in the battle space. I don't think so. Then in another funny, so I might even start a segment called This Day Last Year or something like that. But for example, I'll give you a couple today. So roughly this day a year ago, there was a column of Russian vehicles in the headlines spanning a 60-kilometer convoy of a traffic jam, so about 40 miles on the outskirts of Kyiv, the capital. And long story short, they just turned into sitting ducks for the AFU. And again, almost this day last year, I think it was the 5th or the 3rd of March 2022, the second best army in the world decided to use an elevator to reach UAF soldiers, Ukrainian soldiers, who simply turned off the electricity in the building and captured them. And this was the Russian professional army, and you can tell because their gear is a lot better, as you can see there, than what most conscripts or mobilized soldiers are wearing these days. I'm embarrassed. I'm just embarrassed for Russia. Is that even possible to be embarrassed for Russia like I am? I just feel it. So thanks for watching, guys. I apologize, not a very long video today, not a very detailed or insightful one. In fact, probably my least descriptive and detailed video I've ever done on this subject. But it needs to be a short one. It's the middle of the week. Some of you might know there are always shorter videos in the middle of the week. But yeah, thanks for all of your comments, your likes, your support, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.